I've got a question concerning, and it was brought up in the earlier panel when it comes to marketing plans and how much, when we have so few firms, obviously, or small businesses in particular, exporting stuff. How much of that is related to, and I welcome input from all of you. How much of it is related to marketing? I mean, it's obviously it can be extraordinarily expensive. And if you're concentrating on domestic here in the United States, obviously, and I suppose it could be very, very tough to go into another country and try to even let them know you've got a product out there available. I mean, it's very curious to me. And is it just too, is it just too expensive to try to do that? And where do you go? Or what country do you pick to try to make a dent at least? But I'll start with Mr. Rice.
A couple thoughts. Number one, the expense of going overseas is in the $5,000 to $10,000 range for a reasonable thing, and that's a lot for a small company, a very small company. So the more you can do virtually, so Department of Commerce has some virtual methods to get you overseas, that get your feet wet. Second thing I'd say is when I came back, we put together a program that's called Export Tech, which is a 3-day program where a CEO from a small company comes in. First day is really infusing them with knowledge. The second day is addressing specific problems they may have in the markets they think they want to go to. And the third day, which is 2 months later, they have to provide a business plan to a council of their peers and experts on where they want to go, what it's going to take, and what the realities of the business plan might or might not be. I think that's the sort of training we need to get out to people, whether it's through Mr. Kagan's organization or these public-private partnerships. People just don't understand what the markets are. The business plans are daunting. They don't understand the cultural aspects, and they need help. And they have to have help coaching themselves through the process. They have to do it. As a farmer, if you were going to export to Dubai, and you needed to understand what crops you were going to raise and what might there be a demand for. That's where the foreign presence and the commercial service really helps. It lets you reach into the country, understand through their culture what their market is, and then feed that information back through the USI Act to the local business to reach their education level up to where it needs to be.
I would like to comment on that. Mr. Chairman, I think you started saying how important is marketing and market planning. For new-to-export companies, which is my focus today, and none of which is being provided by either SBA because they don't have the competence to do it, and UCX because they're not interested in helping new-to-exports, they're focused on the other. It's not one thing or two things you can do. That's why we developed a 7-step export enabler program, and we start with assessing whether that company has the potential and readiness to export. Then we train them on how to export. Then we provide the research to identify which markets are most promising and what is the best strategy to get into those target markets. Then we help them develop an export market plan. And the market plan would address the distribution, pricing, promotion, and adaptation strategy in each target market. Then we move to the marketing, the promotion, to implement those aspects of the market plan. So we take them to trade shows, or we recommend that they improve their website, or they do all the marketing things. And the 7th step is the matchmaking. Matchmaking through gold keys is very important. What you should know is the U.S. and Foreign Commercial Service is no longer able to provide the level of gold key support that is needed. And when the STEP program comes along with more demand for gold keys, there's going to be some problems.
Yes.
I would say when you talk about marketing a product overseas, we spend approximately $12,000 to send 2 people to, let's call it Germany every year. That's 2 people. That's time away from the office. We've participated in that show for 10 years. So in essence, we've spent about $120,000 just in participating in travel on the show. Right now, we roughly do maybe $500,000 in export sales. The real challenge is when you show up there is actually selling the product and having the person that you're trying to sell it to understand, your product just in general. Again, I go back to the input costs, usually sugar and other agricultural products that are in our caramel creams. you throw the cost out to them and they shake their head and say, well, no, that's not what it should cost. So once you get over that and you come home, it's usually a 9-month to a 12-month sales cycle for confectionery. By the time you finish your communication and negotiation, you might have to come up with some type of special packaging or labeling to comply with that country. In our case, those sales, unlike the United States, you go and you sell a retailer here in the United States, it's sold and it usually stays on the shelf if you perform. International business constantly needs this feeding that you hear. There aren't the retail, other than Europe, there aren't the retail placements that there are here in the United States. It's mainly an ad hoc sale. So every year it seems we're duplicating the same thing. We may get residual sales if the product sells well or they find a different market. But the challenge is it is not placed on a retail shelf in most cases.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I completely agree with my colleague from California that the ability to be able to sell in the United States pretty well, you're battle hardened by the time you reach the world market. I think that's a good thing. What we find is that it's incredibly difficult to shake some of these small business owners from their complacency, that they have been able to survive on the U.S. market for so long that the thought of even getting out of the office is it's not there. It is very expensive to market. We run trade missions in Maine on a complete total cost recovery basis. Those are, again, they match up very nicely with Mr. Rice and Mr. Getz, about $7,000 for a participant to go overseas with us for a week. The USDA has fantastic programs for agricultural exporters, and then we've been able to stretch those into fisheries and into forest products, which for a state like mine, that's a large portion of our base, but that's not the case necessarily for other states. It's why we got really excited about the SBA STEP program, honestly, which is that there's lots of money out there for agriculture and for forestry and for fisheries, but there's never really been anything for manufacturers, which is one thing that we've kind of thrown out there for a long time. Of our competitor nations are providing whatever. I mean, it doesn't have to be much. In our case, small. We were able to find from another pot of money small grants, $1,000 to put towards companies participating with us on trade missions to offset the costs of travel or matchmaking services or whatever. And just that tiny little bit of money was enough to be an incentive to get them out of the office and actually looking at that international market. So, we the states had pushed Commerce to do something like this, to do a market access program like grant program for manufacturers. SBA kind of came out with this more flexible program that said the states could apply for it and do whatever you'd like to do for export development. Most of us have decided to go that route. That's what we're doing with our application, is to provide offsetting costs for gold keys. Mr. Kogan mentioned, however, there may be an issue of capacity at the Commerce level as to whether or not the posts are going to be able to handle this influx of gold keys, which is going to come out of many of our STEP proposals. And then finally, just to kind of to put a point on the difference between USDA and the ag programs and everything else, we heard a couple of years ago that there was actually more money that was given to the California Raisin Board for marketing of California's raisins than there was in the entire one grant program that the Commerce Department offered for manufacturers. I mean, just one industry was receiving more money than all the rest of the manufacturers could even have the potential to get their hands on, which was not much, honestly. So I guess that would be my key. It's just difficult to get people out of the office, and if you're able to provide them even a small incentive, they're willing to do it and willing to think about it.
Mr. Getz, you guys use beet sugar or cane sugar?
Cane.
Cane.